So, I'm non-binary.
What does that mean?
It means I don't feel like a man or a woman.
If you are neither a man nor a woman, then what are you?
Non-binary. I just said, and I'm going to use they instead of she from now on.
If this is because I have criticized your dress or your manners...
It isn't!
Under the Cune, the term for one whose gender does not match the one given to them at birth was a cunithlock. Perhaps you are like that.
Why do you have to keep picking at it? Why can't you just be happy for me?
Evitash, chakra toebra.
So I'm supposed to struggle with who I am? Even if I don't feel like I fit, even if I feel wrong?
No, you misunderstood.
Then say it better! Why am I never enough for you? Wait for it.
Best part is, while Tash is pounding that snake's nose, she's still holding the ruby in her other hand. Maker's panties, I was so proud.
Oh,
Ah, shit. They're still holding it. Sorry.
What are you doing?
Pulling a barb.
Oh. Okay.
a barv.
Tradition in the Lords of Fortune, from one of our old members, Barv. Good guy, but like most of us, his plans went sideways a lot. Bad blood among your crew's not good for morale, but there's not always time for big, drawn-out apologies. So, when one of us screws up and we know we've screwed up, we do a quick 10 to put it right. Pulling a Barv.
Yeah, I think those clips speak for themselves. I don't think there's any point to reviewing this game. If you still want to buy it after seeing that, then there's no hope for you. Dragon Age: The Veilguard is probably one of the most woke video games ever made. Still not as bad as Dustborn, obviously. The difference being that this is made by BioWare, which once upon a time was one of the greatest Western RPG developers, but they haven't been so in a very long time at this point. Those of you who watched my recent stream know that no, I did not play this game, and no, this video is not going to be a review. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think this deserves a real analysis. But don't worry, Dragon Age Veilguard is still absolutely the subject of today's video, or at least the inspiration. Originally, I was planning on making another Gaming is Dying style video after this game released, titled something like Woke Gaming is Dying, and that's a good thing. But given that the peak player count on Steam for this game reached over 80,000, that tells me that there's still a million idiots who will buy any slop as long as it has a popular name attached to it. It's been well known for years that BioWare is a shadow of its former self, and if you watched even a single trailer on this game, you knew it was going to be bad. I called it from the first reveal trailer. It looked like ass, like a mobile game. I actually think SkillUp, of all people, gave a very honest and critical review of this game, and he described the graphic style perfectly.
Characters do not look like real people. They look like Pixar or DreamWorks characters. You think I'm exaggerating? This is Prince Charming from Shrek. Are you going to tell me this man wouldn't slot right into the Veilguard aesthetic? Man, you could drop him in right now as a companion character and no one would bat an eyelid.
Yeah, once you see it, you can't unsee it. This game fucking looks like Shrek. It is a truly repulsive aesthetic, and it looks worse than Inquisition, which came out like 8 years ago now. And while none of the pre-release material emphasized the leftist ideology that was forced into this game, I feel like you could make a pretty educated guess, especially if you knew who the game director was and what the lead writer looks like. Which, because I currently have a community guidelines warning strike on my channel because of harassment and cyberbullying and hate speech, I'm going to refrain from saying what I really want to say about these people, but still, if you knew the game director was a trans woman, you absolutely would know this game would be woke. I mean, it's not even a question. These people have to shove their ideology into everything they make. And something I was thinking about as I was watching hours of dialogue from this piece of shit game is that maybe video games were better when they weren't trying to be art. And I don't even mean trying to be movies, as I talked about in my last video. In this case, I mean putting in people's personal stories and trying to tell these big moral lessons about don't misgender people or we'll make you do a humiliation ritual, or having your obvious self-insert character air out their mommy issues to the audience. And hypothetically, if either one of these scenes were well written and handled in a mature way, I would still argue that they have absolutely no place in a video game. Maybe if this was some indie project that you made to tell your story or whatever. There's hundreds of indie games that already exist exactly like that, but in a AAA product that is made to appeal to the masses, a game that's made for fun, let's be honest, to tell an engaging adventure fantasy story. I believe that's why the idiots who bought this game got it in the first place, doing zero research, of course. They wanted to play a high fantasy game. That's obviously something that's in demand. Baldur's Gate 3 was extremely successful despite all of the degenerate content, and that game is far, far superior to this one. But to circle back around to my point about games being art, if this is what it means to be art, to have a non-binary character preach to the audience, then I would much rather video games just be soulless products made to make a quick buck. Now, the reality is, games from the mid-90s to the late aughts weren't soulless products. They were made by passionate developers that wanted to make the best video game they possibly could. You know, gameplay was the priority over everything else. Even the games that had great stories still had compelling gameplay to back them up. I mean, you could argue Metal Gear Solid 1 is the first movie game. And yet, what are the most memorable parts of that game other than some of the cutscenes? It's the boss fights, because every boss had a unique gimmick that made them memorable, right? If you cut the gameplay out, Metal Gear Solid would not be considered one of the greatest games ever made, and the same goes for its sequels. At least until 4 anyway, that absolutely was a movie game. The point is, video games 20 years ago were made for gamers, and nowadays they're made for the player. You might not see the difference between those two terms, but there's a reason why a decade ago, every journalist tried to kill the term gamer because we're seen as some kind of problematic group, whereas the player can be anyone. AKA people who don't give a flying fuck about the video game industry, the same people who bought Dragon Age Veilguard at launch. One of the major appeals of Western RPGs used to be player choice. JRPGs were glorified visual novels, and while I do enjoy a lot of those stories, it's clear that most of the players playing those games are playing them solely for the story and not the gameplay. The 4 homies in a row, turn-based style was often an afterthought in a lot of those old games, and even when they try to break the mold, usually people hated it anyway, like Final Fantasy VIII, for example. And so in a lot of old JRPGs, and even some to this day, like the Persona series, for example, the actual gameplay part of the game often feels like filler, a way for the player to sort of earn the next cutscene. And I don't think there's inherently anything wrong with that. There's certainly a place for JRPGs in the market to this day. But the one way in which Western RPGs were arguably superior is that it let the player make meaningful choices that could change the gameplay experience. Like, for example, in a lot of old games, you could do an evil playthrough where you just pick all of the bad decisions and get the evil ending. You could kill some of your companions or corrupt them to your line of thinking. You could often kill a lot of NPCs, especially in Bethesda games, until recently, of course. And this became standard practice. Old BioWare games let you either be evil or let you be renegade in the case of Mass Effect, where you're basically just an asshole or an anti-hero like the Punisher or something. And now that's completely gone. As some other people have covered in their reviews, there is no way to be an asshole in Dragon Age Veilguard, much less be evil for that matter. There's no evil option, and you can't even be mean to NPCs. That is absolutely fucking ridiculous. So all of the meaningful player choice you do is in character creation, which, holy hell, good luck making an attractive character with this piece of shit character creator. Everyone looks like a hideous abomination. But after you pick your class, your character background, your race, all that, There are no meaningful choices in this game until the final mission, according to Skill Up anyway. I have no desire to play this game for myself to verify that. Honestly, I'm not even a Dragon Age fan, right? Which is part of the reason why I didn't want to play this in the first place. I know people love Dragon Age Origins. When I finally sat down to play it like 10 years ago, I got bored about 10 hours in, I'll be honest. So I'm not making this video as a disappointed fan, more like an anti-consumer who is disappointed with the incredibly low standards that casual gamers have. Honestly, talking about the woke elements of this game almost feels like a waste of time. Even though it is some of the worst I've ever seen, I can't help but shake this feeling that if you bought this game in the first place, you kinda deserve it. There's a reason why I titled this video, You Deserve What You Tolerate. If you buy a modern AAA video game without doing any research, watching any trailers, watching any reviews, then you lose the right to complain about the state of the video game industry. And it feels like I'm just preaching to the choir again, because I know most of my fans don't even really buy AAA games anyway, so I doubt this video will actually reach the ears of the morons who bought this game, and they're probably not going to appreciate getting called morons, but am I wrong for insulting these people? Up until this game's release, gamers were actually doing a really good job fighting against all this woke slop. Pretty much every major release with left-wing propaganda in it this year bombed horribly. Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, Flintlock, Banishers, Dustborn, Concord being easily the biggest one by far. Even a fucking Star Wars game bombed this year. And look, I'm not insinuating that 80,000 players on a new AAA release that took 8 years to make is by any stretch a huge financial success, because it isn't. If you think it is, you're coping. BioWare even said they have no plans to make DLC. For a game published by EA, no DLC? Obviously, this thing is not a huge financial success. Dragon's Dogma 2, a sequel to a cult classic niche game, had a peak player count of over 200,000. And I don't think I even need to tell you that Dragon Age Veilguard didn't come anywhere close to Baldur's Gate 3's player count. But to get back to the point I'm trying to make, 80,000 is still far, far too high. I was told for over a decade that PC players were the PC master race, way better than those console plebs. They've got better games, they got better taste, they've got better machines, etc, etc. And yet look at the state of the PC master race now. Fucking Sony games are winning Steam awards. And I don't even need to bring up the insane player counts on shitty survival games like Valheim or Rust or The Forest. And I don't want to devolve into a tangent that's just shitting on PC gamers, but you kind of get my point here. Gamers at large, at least the casual ones, just have bad taste. They are mindless consumer drones who just buy whatever the next big hyped up game is, even when it obviously looks like shit. Again, to circle back to Dragon Age Veilguard, just look at some of these facial animations, man. They don't even match the emotion the character is trying to convey half the fucking time.
You gave them to the gods, didn't you? Didn't you?
Look at that. Does that look like, oh, anger, disappointment, sadness, anguish? What emotion is that? They didn't even try. This took 8 years? Not to mention, like I already said, the horrific aesthetic for the characters. Why does everyone have a giant head? It looks fucking disturbing. And I don't know if this is sheer incompetence from the devs or laziness or an attempt to make them feel more human. The Qunari went from being intimidating, cool, huge demon people to now being dollar store tieflings. It just looks uncanny, man. Oh, and as if it even needs to be said, no characters have any sexual characteristics whatsoever. The boob slider only goes up to B cup, and I think the men actually have bigger asses than the women. And oh god, the millennial writing. I don't even know where to begin with this. Shredded Nerd could make a sequel to his viral video just using clips from this game alone. At a certain point, I realized they write these scenes like it's an episode of Seinfeld. All it's missing is a laugh track.
Back so soon. It must have been worse than I had thought.
Hello, Dreadwolf.
Ah, but perhaps I am mistaken. You may be here to correct me, to tell me that my concerns were unfounded. Perhaps nothing escaped as you stopped me from... what was it? Covering the world with demons?
So you're gonna be insufferable about it. See, this is the reason nobody likes you.
I led a rebellion for centuries that culminated in the creation of the Veil and the destruction of the Elven Empire.
Okay, this is among the reasons nobody likes you.
Oh, and of course there's this holier-than-thou preaching, this sense of objective morality that you get from the good guys in this game. I'm not just talking about the misgendering crap. There is no gray morality in this whatsoever, which, you know, in a story that pushed good values, I wouldn't be entirely against. But no, this is written like a modern cartoon. They tell you it's for little kids, but in reality, it's written for adult lesbians with the emotional maturity of a child. Your player character Rook doesn't even give the villain Solus a chance to explain his motivation for what he's doing. You just accuse him of trying to unleash demons on everything and kill everybody, completely ruining any depth the character might have. No, everything is his fault. He was gonna fuck up everything and kill everybody, even though your character is the one who comes in and disrupts the ritual, which is what allows the evil elf gods to escape in the first place. Now, of course, I'm not going to argue that the villain is actually the good guy or whatever, because his plan was still going to involve killing a shit ton of people. But ultimately, if he was fighting to fix the world from the mistake he made in the first place, which was creating the Veil, then at the very least, you have a villain with an understandable motivation. A motivation that is arguably much stronger than the hero's motivation, which is just, we need to fix the world because bad stuff is happening. Watching all of these dialogue scenes, it seems like your player character isn't really a character at all. Not only are the dialogue options a complete joke, they're Fallout 4 tier, where it's just like, yes, sarcastic yes, enthusiastic yes, and maybe sometimes why, or some other question. But like I said way earlier, there's effectively no player choice in this game. This is like a linear story game, pretending to be an RPG. And so if the hero is just a blank slate goody two-shoes with no real motivation for his actions, obviously I'm going to relate to the villain more, as I often do in left-wing media. If I'm being honest, I think the villain is usually the good guy. So why should I care about anything that's happening? You know, and this isn't even going into your various companions. I guess I could talk about that for a little while, though. Again, I think you guys have already seen some of the worst this game has to offer. But even worse than Baldur's Gate 3, this is 100% a snowflake squad that are already all accomplished badasses despite starting at level 1 at the start of the game, which I think really ruins that progression of the story of the heroes becoming a team and more competent and earning better powers or whatever. It doesn't really make sense. It's some of that good old Ludo narrative dissonance, as journalists would call it. But anyway, to keep it brief, your party members are a ginger dwarf who is the only dwarf to ever get magic powers. Yeah, normally dwarves can't use magic in Dragon Age, so that obviously makes her very special, and she's a returning character from Inquisition. An Indian mage woman with a prosthetic leg, because I guess being Indian wasn't diverse enough. A genius elf mechanic who is incredibly quirky and fucking annoying. She's easily the character in the game with the most millennial-style dialogue. I ended up hating her very quickly. There's a black elf monster hunter with a griffin pet. Black elves really feel like the new hotness in fantasy stories these days. Remember when elves were supposed to represent a sort of alien sense of beauty and pure whiteness? And dark elves were like purplish blue. They certainly didn't have an African phenotype until recently. So I guess this is just standard now. I'm not allowed to criticize it since so much other woke media has already done it. There's a Mediterranean, though he looks more Arabic, assassin who is possessed by a demon. A friendly gentleman necromancer. Yeah, that's totally not subverting expectations. Defiling corpses is in no way evil, guys. And of course, everyone's favorite companion from this game, a non-binary Canary dragon slayer. Gee, does this look like a room full of heroes who are gonna save the world? Well, I guess in modern D&D campaigns it would be. And that's what the whole tone of this game feels like. A really shitty D&D game you would play with your brainwashed neo-Marxist dysgenic friends. I feel like these people don't even hold to their own principles either. Remember when ProZD made a huge deal about voice actors voicing minority characters and how that's totally taking away jobs from people who should be voicing those characters, of course with the implication that it's racist that a white guy voices a black character? Well, guess what? Matt Mercer of Critical Role fame, who could unironically be blamed for how woke Dungeons & Dragons and other fantasy games have become over the past several years, actually voices a black character in this game.
There were venatory whispers about that place. Now we know why.
What's been happening in the city?
Underground sacrifices, dangerous relics flooding the black market. The cult
Isn't this, wait a minute, hold on. I thought voice actor, if you're white, you're only allowed to voice white characters. What happened to that? Did we just all of a sudden ditch that? Did the voice actors realize how much money they were going to lose from that, and then all of a sudden they just quietly abandoned that? Do you think leftists are lining up to cancel this guy? Somehow I don't think so. These people have no fucking morals. If they do it, it's okay because they're spreading the message or whatever the fuck. And that's another thing too I'm sure you noticed if you're watching footage of this game, is that there are no fucking white people. Legitimately, there's probably a handful of actually ethnically Caucasian people in this game, and one of the few I saw was evil. Of course, part of some fucking cult or something. He even did a fucking Hail Hydra moment to taunt the player characters. Holy shit, this game sucks. I feel like there's so much cringe in this game that could be its own video, really, but like I said, I have no intentions of playing this game, and I don't think I'm gonna watch any more footage from it either. If you want to watch a proper review, I would unironically recommend watching Skill Up's review. I really think he broke down a lot of why this game is so ass without even talking about any of the woke shit directly anyway. I think the channel Nick Tech is also doing a good job of showing how inferior this game is in certain ways to Dragon Age Origins. It's legitimately sad that games from 15 years ago easily mog modern games in a lot of ways. Of course, you come to this channel to hear me talk about politics. So yeah, is the game woke? Of course it is, man. I don't think you needed me to tell you that. And I honestly have no desire to look up every single moment of left-wing propaganda in this. I think that character Tosh provides such nuclear levels of cringe with its existence that this creature alone would be enough of a reason for none of you to buy this game. But I think even woke crap aside, this game just looks fucking cheap, dude. If you're that desperate to play a fantasy game, I promise you there's better games out there. Just touch an old good one that you've never played before. I'm sure there's several. There's no way that you have to play a modern AAA dog shit release. That is a choice that you make, a choice that is killing the video game industry. And even if you decide to pirate this, which it has no DRM, so of course that's definitely an option, and plenty of people I'm sure did, you're just wasting your own time, dude. I think Tosh is just the ultimate example of the writers having absolutely no self-awareness. The perfect example is one of the scenes I showed in the intro. That mom scene, to the average onlooker, Tosh looks like the bad guy. The mom just wanted to understand, okay, what the hell does non-binary mean? Why do you feel this way? Is this because of me? And we, the audience, know, yes, Tosh has mommy issues, and obviously she has an irregular amount of testosterone pumping through her veins, so she doesn't feel like a woman. And the writers even have the nerve to say a line this absurd.
Tosh, do you like being a woman?
Nobody likes being a woman.
Oh my god, what the fuck? You know what's funny? I knew that was in the game already. I'm still like, what the fuck? Just like when I was playing Dustborn, this whole thing feels like a self-report from the writers. Like, deep down, they know they're mentally ill. They can't even properly explain how they feel or why they feel it or what they even are when someone asks earnestly and they're just blatantly laying out their agenda for the world to see. Again, not nearly as bad as Dustborn. That's a game that if I had maybe just nutted up and played all the way through it near when it came out, it absolutely would have been worth the video. And don't worry, I'll talk about it quite a bit in best and worst games of this year. But yeah, I guess just in comparison to some of the other games I've played this year, this feels like a lot less of a slap in the face, maybe because I'm not really a Dragon Age fan. But as I said in the intro, you deserve what you tolerate. All you have to do is not buy the game, and then you win. Is that so hard? So as much as I would like to say that gaming is finally healing with all these woke bombs this year, and a lot of companies have now talked about pulling out of ESG funding, there has been a lot of hopium lately that maybe the pendulum is finally starting to shift. But I'm just going to say, I'm not going to get my hopes up until these people show evidence that they're actually trying to appeal to gamers, not players, gamers, with video games again. If there's anything I've learned over the past 4 years, all you need to do is have subtle propaganda and people will eat the slop in an instant. The Fallout TV show was the greatest example maybe that's ever happened in the history of my channel. A show that was just blatantly awful and full of left-wing propaganda that the normie masses ignored because they were too scared of being called a racist. And also people who are blatantly just not Fallout fans, claiming to be fans and arguing with people who actually do care about Fallout, just shows how fucking pathetic some of these people are. And I have to imagine a lot of those people are the people who bought Dragon Age Veilguard. So no, don't get your hopes up that everything is going to heal. It's obvious that the Overton window has still shifted a considerable amount, that people can't even recognize obvious progressive ideology after being exposed to it for over a decade at this point, because to them it's just normal, it's not even woke anymore. And so would it really be that hard for the video game industry to just dial things back a few steps, and then this woke shit is the new normal? I wouldn't even be surprised if the so-called anti-woke YouTubers, I won't name them, but you know who I'm talking about, don't call this shit woke anymore. They've basically already been going that direction for years, and I know some people in my audience have been calling them out for years every time they somehow miss the message being pushed in movies and TV shows. Because all it takes is a tiny amount of subtlety for the normal person to not notice it at all, which is just unbelievable, man. As a lot of people were telling me last video, it seems like a lot of people genuinely have no pattern recognition abilities. So yeah, no, I'm not getting my hopes up that things are going to get better. Why would I? There's no evidence that they will. As soon as there is, I'll start selling white pills like everybody else, but as of right now, I have no incentive to lie to you, and I don't want to lie to you guys. I feel like that's one of the main appeals of this channel, is I try to tell the truth as often as I can. So yes, as much as I wanted to title this video, Woke Gaming is Dying, instead I think it was much more appropriate to tell you, you deserve what you tolerate. That's about it. See you next time, guys.